right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to our Accountants EMPIRE Masterclass CEO series. We sort of kicked this off for the new financial year a couple of weeks ago. I'm actually forgetting the weeks myself. So if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. My name is Paul Jansz, and you're probably in for a little bit of a treat. If you are coming back, welcome back. It's great to have you back, and we're here thanks to Professional Partners Education and our amazing supporters of Hall Chadwick, Profit Master, iKeep, and Lloyd's Auctioneers. Now, just a very quick one with regards to Professional Partners Education. It's a part of what we're doing to, I'll say, give back a little bit to our industry, to continue to provide a platform for learning, whether it be for leaders, whether it be for team members, through the content, all the educational content we provide for all accountants. So whether that be through our live shows like this, whether it be through our podcast series that we've got as well. So anything that you're looking for that is probably from a non-technical perspective, this is where we're providing it to you on our Professional Partners Education. And if you need anything that you may have missed in the past as well, it's all on our YouTube channel. So if any sort of replays and our podcasts and anything, even if you search for it in Apple Podcasts or in Spotify, it's called Drive Time. We've got a number of different bits of content that's coming out throughout this year. Now, today's show, it's a really important one, as most of us are in leadership or management positions, or we aspire to be leadership management owners. We've probably got team members. Funnily enough, I spoke at a CPA conference. Shout out to all the guys that are online that I spoke at the Eastern discussion group only a couple of weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago. And I spoke about the importance, if you want to grow a business, that happens with people. Most of us go into business to one day sell it. So we've got to grow it, we've got to create value. And I believe certainly in the accounting industry, and my experience tells me that, you've got to create capacity. Capacity then creates productivity. Productivity then, if you get it right, can flow down to profitability and therefore add value. Now, but the difficult part about people is that people have got different personalities and can sometimes be quite difficult to manage. 9 times out of 10, and we're not aware of this sometimes, we're not aware, but there's some external factors that come into play, things that sometimes we bring in from home. So, they could be good or bad. That could interfere with the team, could interfere with the way you start your day, could interfere with your attitude, good or bad, could interfere with the culture, good or bad, and no doubt have an effect on someone's performance and the team's performance. So we're here to address a few of those key areas today, which is fantastic. And in probably the other critical part, and I'm going to share a little bit about what I did in June as well. And another critical part that we're all become more aware of because of probably the last 2.5 years or so is the well-being of our team, the care factor of our team, and how that could affect, mental illness, mental health. People, there's people that are unfortunately in that wrong space and they're taking their own lives. And what's our moral responsibility as leaders of our businesses to actually be there for our team members as well? So we're going to get into a little bit about that today. I mentioned June. In June, I did the 2022 push-up challenge. Again, trying to raise the awareness of the mental health aspects. 3,139 push-ups in the month of June. So this is a really important topic to me. I've always seen my people as my number one asset. And I think if you don't have your people, it's very difficult to grow. So how do we continually lead better, manage better, and just probably, if anything, develop new skills? And what you don't know, you don't know. And it's a funny thing that phrase has been coming up quite a lot for me recently. And it's true. What you don't know, you don't know. So hopefully we're here to be able to share a few things with you today and provide you with a few tips and tricks, information, terms that you may not have heard of. So, if you've got notes, you want to type things away, please go for it. Questions, we will be taking questions. So there's a Q&A bar there. So if you want to put down any questions you've got in the chat bar, I'll keep an eye on them as well. Now, let me welcome our guest. It is the next in our CEO series, our CEO. It's the impressive CEO from Ever Perform, Daniel Spitty. Welcome to our EMPIRE CEO series.
Thanks, Paul. I did 3,000 less push-ups than you in June, and I think it shows. So yeah, it's great to be here. Not to talk about the push-ups, but yeah, congratulations on a great personal feat, and obviously the contribution to the wider community around the awareness on such an important topic.
Yeah, thanks, mate. You guys are doing okay. I saw some. I don't know if Jason Robinson's on this today, but I saw some images of you and the future advisory team at the gym the other day.
Yeah, it's been great actually. I think in the spirit of not so much the push-up challenge in June, but maybe in the spirit of dry July in this month. I think, I suppose recategorizing, community events, client events that we do rather than the age-old sort of go out for a couple of drinks. We've sort of tried to change that up a bit with really good effect, and the feedback so far has been really good around meeting up at a breakfast or a smoothie, as we like to say, do a bit of Pilates and have a coffee afterwards. And we've got really good feedback on that. So I think, more of our clients will start to enjoy the fruits of that over the course of the next couple of months as well.
Brilliant. Now, I've had the pleasure of knowing a little bit about you guys. I know your founder for a number of years, together with the company, and today, it's a good thing because hopefully all of you that are listening to this are going to get to learn a little bit more of what I know, and I think that's really important. So we're going to be talking about some things about people data. We're going to be talking about things like a people index. We're going to sort of tap into the, let's call it the blue analytical side of the brain, and we're going to go into a little bit of detail of that, which is going to be fantastic. So, but Dan, I might get you to start a little bit about, you mentioned a couple of things about the company, but let's start with the EverPerform story and you. Why was this company created?
Yeah, I love telling this story. I tell this story a lot. So hopefully, I actually never get sick and tired of talking about it because it's what I live and breathe every day. So as you mentioned, our founder, Wade, he started EverPerform 8 years ago, but actually the idea of EverPerform is more than 20 years old. And it was really when he was at the peak of his sporting career, back when he was playing for an AFL club back in the mid-90s. And he was 18 or 19 at that stage. And what he got exposed to at the football club was this was the age where there was no wearables or a ring like I'm wearing today, Apple Health, Wi-Fi even, and he doesn't like me saying that because it sort of reveals how old he is, but I'll put that in there. When he joined the club and went to the club for his training sessions, he was required to sit down at a desktop computer, open up that humble and noble Excel spreadsheet, and basically answer 20 questions every time he was at the club around how he was sleeping, how was he feeling, was he confident that he was going to play well on the weekend. And initially, Wade sort of didn't understand why he was being asked these questions. He felt that it was laborious, it was a waste of time. But fast forward 6 to 8 weeks, and the coaches as a collegiate group came to him and said, here are the things that you need to focus on that will actually improve your probability of performing well on game day. So what they were doing was they were trying to correlate what we now call the lead indicators to his performance on field with the scoreboard, whether it be for the team or for his particular role in the team around kicks, marks, handballs, etc., to try and find what those positive and negative correlations were around what he had control of doing through the week and how that was actually correlating to his performance on game day. So in essence, that was the birth of EverPerform as an idea. And unfortunately for Wade, his sporting career didn't sort of go on from there, but his professional career did. And he actually introduced, unbeknownst to me, was introduced to my dad. My dad, Roland, he was working at Visi and actually hired Wade as a graduate. And that's how I came to meet Wade, actually. I remember when I was 14 years old, I think, we were sitting down at a cafe, and as you know, Wade, he loves his frameworks and his models and talking about, the big questions in life. So as a really young, fresh, wet behind the ears 14-year-old, thinking I knew everything, he was starting to put the life wheel on a napkin, really starting to, I suppose, ask some questions that I've never asked myself, which has remained with me throughout our working relationship. So he's been a long time mentor of mine, as Roland. And I know we're going to sort of touch on mentors a little later on, but basically he used that same spreadsheet in his sporting exposure and adapted it to the workforce. He became a manager very quickly as a high performer, and his only real reference of how to measure and manage people was this spreadsheet. So what he did is he adapted it for the workforce, added components in like leadership and capacity and behaviors and values. And he used that to achieve some phenomenal results in that business over a long period of time, and went out, started some other companies and had similar successes. And it got to a point 8 years ago where he said, no, this needs to be something more than just a massive spreadsheet now. It actually needs to be a platform that we can give the world, all in the name of helping people improve. So fundamentally, we're a measurement company, we're a tech company, we're a SaaS-based B2B company. And we really have spent probably the first 3.5 to 4 years of our life as a company really investing quite significantly in R&D. And that for us is around the sports psychology and how to apply that and have that living and breathing through the framework, through our measures. Also around the data science, obviously, around how we create an overall performance score that's meaningful for people. And in the middle, we've got human behaviors and really around using the best and leveraging the best research and studies that continually come out, as well as the best new technology, whether it be Whoop bands or, as I mentioned, Aura rings or others that will come onto the market. How do we actually use that to provide insight specifically around the things that are most meaningful to achieving high performance, or just performance for most? So that was really the first 3.5 years of our life as a company, was really creating that platform and what we call the universal measurement framework for people. And then it became really a challenge around finding a market that was ready, that was suitable. And really the next sort of 4.5 years for us has been further experimentation of really trying to utilize that platform in the right market for the right people to achieve great results. So, and that really for me was the challenge when I joined Everperform, was we had awesome technology, we had an awesome platform, but not a lot of people using it. So that was really my arrival 6 years ago. So about 2.5 years in, around really finding where the commercialization of that technology was, and we're now away. So that's sort of our abridged version of our story today, mate.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Look, it is a great little story, and I think a lot of people in business try to work out, and I suppose we use sport as a really good framework, I suppose, and trying to work out, we're all, especially sort of Melbourne people, whether it's AFL or whether it's what creates a success of our Australian cricket team, or even our Australian sort of women's cricket team, and there's a lot of different reasons why those things happen. So the ability to take what Wade learnt as a young fella, now hopefully, I don't know if he's listening to this, but maybe an old fella, but taking what he learned as a young fella and sort of bringing that into the workplace, where this is all about trying to find, I suppose, the edge of leadership and management, and how do we create a greater team members that will stick around for a greater period of time, which will then create a greater culture, which will then create greater performance. And it all links together for me, and that's probably why I've really enjoyed the journey over a fairly long period of time as well. So congratulations to what you guys continue to do, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, mate, thanks, mate. We're extremely proud so far, but we've got a lot of unfinished business too.
Yeah, which is always a great driver. There's no doubt about that. I think you talk to any sort of coach, there's always unfinished business. Even if you've won one premiership, how do you win the next 2 3 years? It's
exactly.
You've got to go to the next level. Let's talk about, you spoke about Wade a little bit as the founder. Let's talk about a little bit of the transition of taking over, because I think you find that's not an easy thing to do. I wouldn't imagine. Tell me a little bit of let's call it the split roles. You mentor, you sort of mentioned he was a mentor as well, and I know we're going to get into that a little bit, but the transition from Wade to yourself as CEO, and how you both best work together, knowing a little bit of the beast with Wade Keenan as well.
Yeah, it's been interesting, challenging, and I wouldn't say predictable. by any stretch. I remember Wade actually, when it happened, and when he had the conversation with me around his intention to hand over the reins of that CEO position to me. And it was actually, I was 4 weeks into a recovery after rupturing my patella tendon, and I had my leg in a straight cast or brace, so I couldn't run away from him, which I think he used to his advantage. But I think how his philosophy is that he often will provide opportunities to people that he's got good belief in 12 to 18 months before he really feels like they're ready. And obviously through the results that he's achieved through his career, he's used that to great success. He certainly had his failures in that as well, and I certainly didn't want to be one of them. But I've really trusted him over a long period of time. As I said, I met him when I was really young, and I remember actually penning at that stage. I'm supposed to be an email now. But just asking him questions around things that I wanted to do in my career and what his advice was in terms of what university degree should I go for, or what university should I go for. So it's sort of beyond my dad and my mum, and some other key figures like some leaders at the footy club that I was playing with at the time. Wade's always sort of been there from 14 years old as a really pivotal sounding board for me. So I think this was like an interesting moment whereby that sort of mentor, then that relationship shifted. And because my father also worked in the business as well, there was that added element. And I'd worked with my dad I've worked with him now for 12 years, which isn't common. But I really look at that as I'm really lucky to be able to spend that period of my life with him, and hopefully he feels the same. But yeah, certainly never take that for granted. So I think the challenge was really understanding, what decisions and what ownership I now had that came with that role, and sort of moving that way in terms of really feeling like I had ownership rather than saying the words around making the decision, but really it was, collaborative and still certainly is in some cases. But I think that was really something that took a lot of time. And I think also in a startup and being a business owner and actually owning the key decisions for the business, you get more exposed to the good, the bad, and certainly the ugly. And I think that in terms of my own development, I sort of use the analogy that I was one that always paid my phone bill on time. I always paid my gas bill on time. Now that's really difficult to do when you look at the bank account, you got zero against it. And being able to feel a level of, comfortability with that, or uncomfortability with that, I should say, is an analogy that I think that it's been one of the great learning experiences for me, and still is to this day. We pay a lot more bills on time, mind you. So yeah, I've got Wade to thank a lot for, I suppose, entrusting me to take over the reins of the business, but he's still very active in terms of the advisory side, the strategic side, the R&D, and sort of the vision side of our business. And he's critical in, particularly the larger strategic opportunities, whether they be with clients or whether they be with partners or others that I haven't even thought of yet, that he's always bringing that as sort of like a third or fourth eye, if you like, to what he's seeing a bit further out. So still, we're still working on that, but I think it's evolved really well. And I've got a lot to thank him for in terms of sort of enabling me and empowering me to make those decisions, because I know that it certainly hasn't been easy for him on his side either.
Yeah, really, I'm just writing a couple of words now that people can sort of resonate with. And I think, there's a couple of things that you just mentioned, which is enable and empower. And sometimes we as leaders, managers, there's a very clear difference between leadership and management as well. So again, if you're not quite sure, I don't know if we'll have time to go into that, but to enable and to empower your team members are critical factors. So if there's something that you that you're watching this, write that down and even ask yourself the question. One of the things that I know, Dan, you do this as well, but a bit of self-reflection is really important in your role, whether, we're both dads, whether you're a dad and you need to reflect, whether it's with your partner, you need to reflect, or whether it's in business and you need to reflect. I think really important little messages there. And two of the key words I just wrote down there, which is interesting. Ask yourself whether you're enabling and whether you're empowering. And only you can answer that based on your own style. Mate, and please feel free to jump into any comments that I might share as well. But you spoke about the company, and your words were the company's evolved. You spoke about it was born from sport and now been applied in the workplace. Tell me, there's a word in there that is probably most people may not be aware of, and you use a word called an index, or why you built, let's call it the index. And maybe then you can also go on to explain a little bit about what you call the coaching network effect. You okay to go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the index was only born about coming up to 2 years ago, actually. And where that concept came from actually was at XeroCon 2019. And I remember I was in the crowd. It was our first XeroCon. We're a Xero partner as part of their app ecosystem, and they've been just awesome for us over a long period of time. And we were in the startup alley, I think they called it. So we had like a little stand and a little laptop computer, but this event was amazing. I'm sure many on the call have actually been to one, and we've got it upcoming again this year, which we're excited about in Sydney. But I was there in the crowd, and the managing director of New Zealand was actually up talking, and all of a sudden, like this stage, which had these bright lights and big wow factor, loud music, everything just went down. Like the whole room dimmed, and the spotlight was on this stool in the middle of the stage. And Craig Hudson is his name. He walked out and he sat on that stool with his head down. And then for the next, I can't even remember how long it went. It felt like forever, but in a great way. He just encapsulated the whole audience. You could hear a pin drop about his own personal struggle with mental health, to the point where just by luck, his wife had a hunch to know where he was at a point in time and actually was there basically to save him. And they, at the same time, a couple of sessions later, Xero at that stage also launched their Small Business Insights Index, or Small Business Index. And this is basically utilizing the data that gets gathered across all of their millions of subscribers. What is the data-driven state of the economy, stats like, what's the time in terms of payments, those types of metrics that sort of support what economic stats come out from the ABS, government, etc.
Yep.
And post that, I'm like, you know what? We've actually got an opportunity to create what we now call the Performance Index, which incorporates well-being, relationships, and productivity, which is the framework that we capture on our index and our platform. Because those three dimensions actually make up performance. We like to say, we focus in on accounting firms, and we like to say, well, the measure of a good accountant is no longer about productivity. It's no longer just how quickly they get a tax return out. I certainly don't choose my accountant on the basis of how good they are at doing that. I do it on the basis of I've got a great relationship, I can trust them, I can rely on them when I need to. And certainly over the last 3 years, it's almost like they've been the small business and the business front line, with no disrespect or putting them in the same pedestal as obviously the health industry. But geez, they've had an interesting ride, and they've been there, and we've got a lot to thank, I think, as an economy for them and as people as well. So the index was born from that, where I felt like we had an opportunity to be able to provide insight around things like, what is the impact of tax deadline on this industry? What happens to well-being? Do people get more stressed out in the lead into that? What happens after they've taken 3 weeks holiday? But what happens in the lead in as well? Do relationships go up when people are able to now come back to the office for work? So coming at it from a data-driven perspective as an aggregate, I felt like we had an opportunity to do that. And from a strategic point of view for our business, that was really the call that we made, that we need to be the best for one industry. We can't be good at multiple industries, because realistically, an accounting firm or a leader of an accounting firm doesn't necessarily want to compare themselves to a small startup out of Cremorne in Melbourne. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But in essence, what it is if you think about it like a stock market or a Moneyball concept, which is how do you leverage data on the key dimensions of performance, not just around productivity and billing, but actually what is actually the makeup of a whole person, not just what they do, but also how they do it, how they feel, are they reaching their potential, are they growing, do they create meaning and foster meaningful relationships, these types of elements which make up, coming back to Wade's story, what are the lead indicators to them actually hitting the scoreboard? And we've recently released that, started about 18 months ago or 2 years ago. And now we're actually seeing a lot of industry, a lot of our clients, a lot of our prospects and other partners across the industry actually use that as a reference point to get a real feel and insight into, well, what's actually happening across the aggregate of our clients, which is only a small set or subset of the industry, but at least it's coming at it from real people, real data in real time, mind you. So this is not a once-off snapshot once a year. This is actually getting updated every week to give the indication and the variability throughout a 3-month, 6-month or 12-month period, rather than just taking a slice of, really, if you're doing it once a year, you've only got 1 in 365 chance of getting it right.
Yes.
So yeah, that was the index, and we can certainly see, the case, and we've had proven case studies with other clients in other industries of that framework working extremely well to achieve high performance as well. But given we're a small company, we want to get it right really for one industry in one location and one region first, which is here in AU, and then take on the world from there.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, I suppose it's an interesting one, talking about data and I suppose the index, and for current leaders, it's one thing to have the data, it's another thing to know how to use the data. So how are some of your leaders using the data, or how are you using the data?
Yeah, I think that is certainly a learning that we've had over the last few years, is that the engagement with our platform, I think from our own data and using our own, I suppose, practicing what we preach, we can see that when managers and leaders are actually leveraging and using that data in the conversations that they're having with their people, that's when the engagement and that's when the results really drive themselves. When you've got employees, we send out pulses on a weekly basis, and we ask questions across the categories of performance that I mentioned before. So, for example, a wellbeing question could be, I'm feeling good and energized, and rating that out of 5. I've been thinking clearly. Relationship questions like I've had quality conversations with my manager recently, or I feel like I've got good relationships with the clients I'm working with right now. We've got teammate questions, and then productivity. We measure not only the scoreboard, which is where are people spending their time and what the recoveries for that time are, but also around subjective productivity. So things like, are they actually enjoying the work that they're doing? Are they growing? Do they feel like they've had opportunities to learn and develop recently? So by answering these questions on that weekly basis, what we're seeing is that from the index is that when we look at well-being and the overall index scores, and we separate it between employees and managers for us are anyone with direct reports. So that could be anyone from a junior manager all the way up to a partner, an executive. The overall well-being index last year, so financial year 22, compared to where it sat at the start of the financial year, went up by 2.2%. And think about that from our perspective around, we want to help people improve. That for us is massive. And you talked about around sort of reflecting and going, okay, let's enjoy the wins and look at what, that for us was an extremely proud moment. However, the manager cohort went down by more than 7%. And that was a really curious thing for us. It matched a lot of the anecdotal conversations that we were having with our clients and with our prospects, because usually we engage at the manager or above level when we meet and prospect and present and pitch and just have conversation. And certainly from those levels, we were understanding, and we feel it, and I feel it myself, it's extremely challenging, if not the most challenging time right now than it has ever been to actually manage and lead people. And we're seeing that by having insight and being able to actually profile your people in a positive way, not in a big brother way, but actually in a positive way, is giving them a voice and a reflection opportunity for themselves to answer these questions, to correlate that and understand, well, what are their own performance patterns? But it's being such an advantage to managers and leaders to then be able to use that data to go, okay, well, this is now what I can focus on with you and how I can help you, rather than spending 60 minutes to download all of that information. Actually, probably just talk about the work that needs to be done rather than who is actually doing that work and how they're feeling and everything else, like you talked about around bringing the whole self to work. Well, what else is going on? Now, manager and leader capability to do that is obviously varied. And we're spending now and investing a lot of time and effort and talking with the best in the business in terms of our partner network to really now hone in on that level, because we feel like they're the enablers. They're also the barriers, but they're the enablers really to not only improve themselves through doing this, because there's obviously a lot of benefit that comes with that, but ultimately, how do they get more efficient and effective of actually improving the people that ultimately they're responsible for? And that for us is, again, an abridged version of what we've learned over the last couple of years, is it can't be just a technology that you put in and say, good luck, we'll see you at renewal time. It's one that we're really invested in actually helping the leaders and the actual people on the ground as well get the most out of what we have.
Yeah, I think you sort of mentioned it before in terms it can't be seen as a big brother type of initiative. So therefore, that's what I started to write down before in terms of just, it's not just a matter of gathering the data or asking the questions or the pulses as you mentioned it. It's communicating to the team why we're doing this as well. So it's at the end of the day, that's a paramount sharing of why we're doing this.
Yeah, you're spot on. And we spend a lot of time in the upfront messaging with our clients and ongoing messaging, actually. It's not just a once-off. And, you can talk to, I think the best advocate for it's not just launch and there we go, that we've seen and had exposure to is Adam Irwin from Pitches in Sydney. And I know that you've interviewed Adam before. But certainly his philosophy, and I think it's absolutely spot on, is that it needs to be ongoing. It's a journey rather than just a destination at the start, and then we say, great, we're off and running. And certainly with the transient nature of the workforce, whether it be around location or people coming in and out, every time that happens, the actual team dynamics has got the potential to change. People are getting new managers, or they're now becoming managers and needing to learn these things whilst, being resource constrained and trying to work on the tools at the same time as learning a whole new capability set and a whole new team of people that are all unique. And, it's no wonder that they're feeling the pinch when it comes to, their own well-being and just their mindset around, do I have what it takes to actually do this? And, our fundamental belief is yes, absolutely, but you need help. And we're certainly here to be able to help from the data and the insight side, whilst others will help around the actual improvement and how to have those conversations and actually increase their leadership capability and measure the impact of that as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think it's an interesting one because you're right, our workforce has changed. Whether depends on where people are. Sort of, we've had people register from Hong Kong and Singapore for this as well. So depending on where you are, if you're in AU, obviously, and certainly where we are in Victoria and Melbourne, we've been in lockdown for a number of months, and the whole workforce has changed, with even now still people wanting that flexibility to 2 days from home or 3 days from home and 2 days in the office. And I think only recently, maybe the last week, we're told if you can stay, if you work from home, you can work from home again. So was that an opportunity to test a few things, to experiment a few things?
Yeah, I'd say that for us, experimentation is in our DNA. We're experimenting every day. And I think COVID actually was an experimentation that the whole world was actually doing all at the same time. And therefore, no one had the silver bullet, no one had the answer. And I think that that for us really solidified that, because all of the people, and we've got obviously the benefit of actually having a look at all of the population of what we call performance passports, which is essentially the profile of an individual across the index. There are actually no two passports that are exactly the same. Even though their measures are, and what we measure on them is the same, the result sets or the actual score in each of those is not the same. And I think that for me, just again, solidifies that if you're trying to have one solution for all, I talk about how often companies will run an annual survey. They'll look at the results and say, okay, well, 72% of the people say this, so let's go and work out a solution for that. Stopping and realizing that you're actually actively disengaging the other 28% of the people that said they didn't want that one thing is made actually do more damage, particularly if they're in key positions or they're in high performance or in key roles. So changing that and more focusing on, well, what are the 3 or 4 things that we can do that will give us 100% coverage across everyone's preferences, rather than picking one, which is easy to do, and just roll it out to meet 72, I think is this new age of, I suppose, strategy execution. And you can't have, obviously, if you've got 1,000 people saying 1,000 different things, it's going to be really difficult to be able to meet all of their demands. But I think as much as that, the actual shift and how dynamic that can change now, it's happening now weekly or monthly. It's not sort of every quarter or year. So it's certainly presenting really big challenges to, not just us as a company, but also our clients. But I think the representation of where measurement fits in that is, at least you've got data to actually tell you, well, rather than guessing or interviewing a select few within your company around what they think is happening, you've got data that actually shows, well, where has the shift been? But also, when you are executing whatever these strategic initiatives are, or changes, or reacting to things, you can actually validate what the impact of that has been. And I know we're going to talk about wellbeing in a moment, but for us, the wellbeing component has significantly increased. We're excited to have Tom Boyd, who's an ex-AFL player, who he's got his own awesome story around resilience and mental health and football. His book's actually getting released next week, so it's great timing, and can't wait to finish it off. Mm-hmm. However, he often says that his concern or his fear is that right now there's a lot of money and probably more money than ever that's being spent on wellbeing initiatives and to be able to help people in this space. But if the impact of that isn't being measured, his fear is that people won't actually see where the benefits are, and they'll actually pull the investment back, thinking that it's not working. And I think that that's where, probably as a sort of subcomponent of what we do, part of our role is to actually showcase, where that's happening, even down to the individual level, rather than looking at the aggregate saying, oh, nothing's really changed, but actually half the population have gone significantly up and half have gone significantly down. And by knowing that it has changed, and you can actually then do something about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, if I go back to some of the coaching and training days when I ran GPL, we even back then we were talking to firms, and maybe firms online can probably resonate with this in terms of that blanket approach that you spoke about before. Let's just talk for a second technical training. We're doing non-technical training here for the accounting industry, but the technical training aspects that, a partner might just say, oh, yes, and it's an investment, but everybody is going to this technical training session, but it may not suit everybody. because everyone's in different positions, and because of the different positions, different learning capabilities, and the way that people are also taking information. So everything's quite different based on the individual, as opposed to that blanket or that scattergun approach that it's just going to, it's going to get to everybody. So it's a really good point you made just then in terms of looking at that and how that flows through. Wellbeing, you're right. It's an important term. I know Tom's been on board now for a while. And for those who don't know, you can sort of do a quick Google search of Tom Boyd and Premiership player at the Western Bulldogs, and gone through his own mental health issues. Why is it important? Let's touch on that. Why is it important? It's a word that continues to get thrown out, and sometimes that people may not even understand it. But why is it important?
Well, I like to add a word in front of it, or two, which is health and well-being.
Okay. And
if you don't have those two things, you don't have a chance beyond that.
Mm.
If you don't have health and well-being as a human, you're in in what position are you in? Even to think about other things in that life wheel, if we go back to the napkin that Wade drew, whether it's work, whether it's education, whether it's family, friends, hobbies, health and well-being is the foundation of us as humans. And therefore, I think by adding that word, it becomes a bit more solidified, rather than well-being is everyone has a different definition of it. You ask three people on the street to give you an answer, there'll be three different answers. And we do a lot around actually, trying to define that and make it meaningful and relevant to the various personas that we support, not only within our own business, because it means different things to different people, even within our own team, but to educate and to raise awareness, and I suppose to trigger or create a motivation to want to do something for yourself around that. We often say around, put your own oxygen mask on first and then worry about others. But I think also in line with that, I remember Danny Frawley at his funeral, one of his mates got up and spoke about Danny, and he said that really well-being is everyone's own responsibility. And if you're not taking responsibility for your own well-being, then it's very unlikely that someone else will, for one. But even if they do, they can help. But if you're not taking responsibility for it, then there's only so much that they can actually do. So that rings true for me, even over the course of the last couple of years in particular. And I think that the more people that come to that realization and can leverage people that have come to that realization already is really critical in this. So wellbeing was something that was always in, I suppose, the framework of how we measure performance, even way back when Wade was using his spreadsheet at the footy club. There are elements of wellbeing in that. It just wasn't called wellbeing back then. So I think it's this labeling that has really come together really, really well, pardon the pun. But I think also the pandemic, I think heightened the focus on well-being, and I'm still yet to sort of sit back long enough to really reflect on that and why. But I think one of the good examples is that people's personal lives became open, right? You were now looking at people not in the office anymore. You were seeing a cat walk in the bedroom, or in my case, three young kids come through and trying to put a lock on the door to make sure they didn't come into interviews like this. But even if they did, people were more accepting of it. But I think that was sort of more of a window into the personal lives of people, which gave an insight into not only how were they working from home, but also what was home life for them. So I think that maybe had an impact, and we can certainly see it in the industry that we're focused in on. Is it's really accelerated now, I suppose, the readiness for leaders and firms that we thought maybe were 5 years away in terms of taking on a really new concept like ever before. Now we're seeing that come into, we need it now because this is a real challenge for us and we need help.
Yeah, it's a good point. And is that something that you adopt yourself? I know you spoke about some of the stuff and you mentioned Pilates and so on, but in terms of investing into your well-being and how that benefits others?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, over the last 2 years in particular. So my youngest, Gordy, he turns 2 in a couple of weeks. And about 3 months leading into that was around February, March 2020. So sort of, actually April 2020, I'd say. COVID had significantly hit by then, and we were in lockdown, particularly here in Melbourne. Unfortunately, it wasn't our only one, but we were good at lockdowns by the end of it. And I remember I was doing about 5 or 6 hours of exercise a week. At that point, I had 2 kids, Rafi and Cleo, as well, who were 2 and 1 at that stage. 3 and 2, yeah. With 3 kids, mate, it's hard to remember with the chronological time order and where they all sit, but they're all young. I'll put it that way.
Yes, more importantly, mine are a little bit older. Yours is still young.
And my beautiful wife, Sarah, she was obviously 7 months pregnant, and I was doing about 5 or 6 hours a week of exercise. I was obviously gunning pretty hard with the business as well, and just sort of adapting to this working from home. And we were pretty well prepped, and we were well prepped, and we made the move quite well. But I could see, I just had this feeling like I was almost about to lose control of, and I just didn't have confidence in my own belief systems around what was good for me, like 5 or 6 hours a week of exercise, and how I was eating, and was I actually getting the most out of myself, and was I drinking too much, and those types of things. And I thought, you know what, this is probably the time where I need help. So I reached out to a guy that I've been following for a while. Luke Masland is his name. He owns a company called Total Performance Living, and he really helped me understand the relationships between mindset and spirit and energy levels and physical exercise. And one of the first things that he realized, or made me realize, was, Daniel, you only need to be doing 2 hours of exercise a week. I'm like, great, because I'm not going to have 5 or 6 hours come when Gordy's here and all hands on deck. So that for me was a big, big thing, because I'd never really gone and done that for myself. And it was, in a way, me going and asking for help, which is difficult, but I do it a lot more now. And as a result of that and that investment, and I've still got Luke to this day, I'm feeling better. My energy levels are better. I'm thinking more clearly, got more confidence. And I said to him recently, I just feel like I'm in such a good position now to be able to support myself, which, going back to that oxygen mask example, I've now got the ability, not only in that position to support myself, but now to actually support and lead not only my own team, but our clients and my family, the people around me that mean the most to me. And a lot of the reasons why I do what I do every day at EverPerform is because of them. So that for me was something that, I saw that as the biggest investment I could make. So it's not around investing money in other areas. It's like the best investment that I can make was actually in myself, because the multiplier effect of the impact that I can then have based on that investment is huge. And I don't think it's any coincidence that, EverPerform over the last 12 months in particular has done really well. And certainly, as I said before, we've got a lot of good things to do yet. But yeah, I think to be running a company that actually has made me better is a beautiful thing. And I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, well said, mate, and congratulations, because I definitely feel there's probably been a shift, especially for males, where we're not the sort of person that, like you said before, we're not the sort of males and probably our fathers and the generations before that, we're not the sort of generations that would put our hand up for help. But I feel we've got a lot better at that, because we're open to this. We're doing this right now, talking about it, and it's okay to talk about it. I'm exactly the same, and I think it's important for everybody, and they're in that situation and they feel they're in that situation to reach out, put your hand up, ask for help, and more importantly, communicate that with your partner as well. Just as important. Mate, talk about leadership styles for a second. Coming back to the business, there's been a fair bit of growth and change. You mentioned before $0 in the bank, and that's, again, it's an interesting growth phase to go through there. But what sort of leadership style do you work through at EverPerform? And then maybe we can also touch on a little bit about mentors, because you spoke about that before and the importance of that. Whether you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, you've spoken about Wade, you've spoken about your dad, Roland. Let's touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I take a lot of inspiration from both of them. I would say for the most part, and then certainly others. Like, I even look towards my wife, Sarah, and just how she's adapted, in particular, in watching her over the course of the last 5 years with Rafi, Cleo, and Gordy, and her resilience and her ability to lead the family, or co-pilot the family, as I like to say, with me, and just how that's needed to shift in terms of when they outnumber you, you've got to work as a team, I like to say. So I think in a lot of ways there's sort of those three people in particular that I've taken a lot from and sort of molded my own style, because obviously I'm my own self. But I think coming back to the wellbeing piece, for me, it's a lot about the role modeling and making sure that, if I'm expecting others to do something like, for example, look after themselves from a wellbeing perspective, then I need to make sure that I'm not working 100 hours a week and just giving the wrong impression on the back of that. I think, role modeling for me is massive. I think also coaching mindset or relationship with my team, and in essence taking a lot of what Wade inspired and obviously had a proof point with me as well around putting me in a position where I was probably 12 or 18 months too early. I think really backing my people in and having the data, I suppose, to be able to just validate that, not only by making the right decision, but also making the decision right. So being able to follow that through. So the decision isn't the finish line, it's actually the start line. So the coaching element and really looking to them to find purpose, or their own purpose in their work. And I think, my leadership style is probably different for the different people in the team, depending on how they best liked to be led. And I think that piece is something, I often get asked, well, how often do you meet with your people? And I say, well, which one are you talking about? Because some of them are once a month for a meaningful an hour and a half. Some of them are every day for 5 minutes, because that's what gets them, keeps them motivated and gets them going, gives them clarity for the day ahead. So I think this sort of personalization of leadership is something that obviously I don't sort of change in terms of who I am with them, but the engagement and what I can see or I feel is the best, and hearing from them what works for them as well is really critical. So I think that sort of then comes into collaborative leadership as well, rather than saying this is the way to go and this is the absolute right decision, or this is exactly what you need to do if you want to follow in my footsteps. It's not about that at all. It's more around how do we get them to the next level, and that for me is around working with them rather than working on them in that sense.
Yeah, brilliant. And is there anything that you can share with our listeners with regards to maybe one key thing that you felt you weren't good at that you've become good at?
Oh, one thing, mate. There's 1,000 things I'm still not good at. I'd say, to be honest, backing myself in.
Okay.
I think that transition that we talked about from Wade to me, a lot of that was a lot of doubt, from that moment, probably for the next 12 months. And then I think that, continually to have the discipline and I think what made it easy for me before joining EverPerform, I spent about 18 months really determining for myself what impact and legacy I wanted to leave on the world. And that for me was probably the best exercise that I went through. And I would encourage anyone at any time, if they haven't gone through and done an exercise like that, certainly don't take as long as I did. It doesn't need to be 18 months, but I just went through it quite thoughtfully. As you know, Paul, I'm quite a deep thinker. So I went through quite thoughtfully, and I only joined EverPerform because it was aligned as a vehicle to help me do what I love and want that legacy to be, which is to help people improve. If I didn't have that, then I wouldn't be working here. So I think for me, it was around that belief and that confidence growing to back myself in would be the biggest shift, I feel. And it's probably aligned with what I was telling Luke, my coach, only a few months ago, is I feel like I'm in a really strong position now to support myself. So yeah, that's one thing of a thousand, mate, but that's probably another series in its own.
No, brilliant. It's 12:56. If you've got any questions, I know there was I'll just quickly read this out. No question, just wanted to say thank you for the kind words and recognition about the industry, Daniel, from our good friend Jason Robinson. So there you go. But if you do have any questions, please throw them into the Q&A if you've got anything you want to ask Daniel. But I love what you just mentioned there in terms of impact and legacy. And it's a good question to ask ourselves, isn't it? And I know you are a deep thinker. And it's a funny thing when you, again, don't ever believe if you are a leader and you want to improve, that what sort of Daniel mentioned before was about self-belief. So always believe in yourself, take a punt on yourself, invest in yourself. There's a lot of people that say we're very quick to go and invest in other things and we don't invest in ourselves. Well, and always search for what suits you. Not everyone's going to be the same, as we've spoken about today at the last 56 minutes. So you are probably the critical factor that'll make a difference to your people and your business and the future of the person you want to become. I think really important factors there. Questions, there's one come through there. Michelle Robinson, any relation to Jason Robinson?
I was going to say, there's a lot of Robinsons on the call.
A lot of Robinsons on the call. Sorry, it's just a thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Very insightful. So there's another Robinson. Here we go. So is Daniel open to sharing his daily, weekly, monthly action for things that make him better and more productive as a person?
Yeah,
Robinson,
sure.
That's for sure.
It's some boys making it. Yeah, I think for me, in terms of what I do daily, or my daily action, I call it the morning ritual, which doesn't necessarily need to happen in the morning, but I think throughout the day, I'm trying to find time, like for example, in preparation for this interview, doing some meditation and mindfulness for 5 minutes just to get my parasympathetic mode on rather than the fight mode or flight mode. So I think that, yeah, part of my learning through Luke and the work that I've been doing with him is around just the importance of breath and clarity of thought and putting your nervous system in a really good position to take on the day. So my morning routine is that. It's also daily journal, which I also did today, writing down some thoughts, reflection points, anything. I think today I said I'm really excited about doing this. So tomorrow I said, well, I think it went pretty well. I'll ask Paul. But also as part of that too, are breathing exercises and some stretching, really sort of get the body moving. And that for me, that combination, along with a bit of a cold shower at the end of a hot shower in the morning, is one that sort of gets me in a position where I feel like I can take on the day. So that's sort of something that I do daily. Weekly action, what would be weekly? Yeah, I started PT, personal training. I found it really difficult to sort of continue to show up and create my own sort of routines around movement. So yeah, for me actually, and this probably goes to a bit more of the monthly action or the way that I look at life, is what I call life design. So I do it at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning in Flinders Street here, and people say, "Oh, isn't that when you're supposed to start work?" I'm like, yeah, but I've got 3 young kids at home. If I do it at 6 a.m., I'm missing the key moments that I'm actually needed in terms of my family around helping us get ready for the day, wake up, showers, breakfasts, getting their bags packed, putting the lunch boxes together. Sarah said to me about halfway through, there's no value in you being here when the kids are all sleeping in the middle of the day. And you go, what could I do? That's not what I need you. What I need you is in these moments at the start and the end of the day. So I think, again, coming back to that self-belief and that confidence thing, Paul, I think being able to do what is right rather than trying to fit in with everyone else in terms of what they believe is right. I think that sort of comes through with that confidence thing. And then monthly, what could I say in that? Probably less monthly, but I think how it worked is at the start of the year, I defined some key goals for myself, and they were around well-being, productivity, and relationships. No coincidence, it lines up with our performance index. And the relationship goal I had was, what I realized was I was spending a lot of time with a lot of important people, but the quality of that time probably didn't come through. So what I did was I said, well, when do I actually spend quality time and create those, more meaningful relationships and actually learn more about the important people in my life, whether they be family or friends or colleagues. And it was actually when we go away. So when we, go away, get out of the hustle and bustle and actually spend 24 hours together for multiple days, that's when I find I really connect and I'm able to give more of myself. So monthly action for me is actually plan 12 trips for this year. That's even including just a trip for me, just to get away from, in a way, spend some time with myself, which won't be too long, mind you. But yeah, whether it's family, Sarah for our anniversary, good mates. We went to Marysville recently and did some activities up there, camping and bike riding. That's my monthly, I suppose, action, if I was to answer that in another way. So all of that sort of, for me, makes up a pretty good sort of operating cycle that I know if I do those sort of lead things, then whether it's work outcomes or life outcomes will sort of, take care of themselves.
Very cool. Mate, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I think the great part is there, and I've got a page of notes here as well. So, like anything, I suppose, these sessions are all about someone sharing their story, but how does it resonate with you? And what, I mentioned before, what you don't know, you don't know. So what can I learn? What can I reflect on? Some of the terms that Daniel's used has been outstanding, and I'm very similar in that sort of sense. So I'll go away this afternoon and reflect on some of the key things and what I can start doing as opposed to what I can't. It's a little thing in our family. I've got 3 young boys, 12. My oldest turned 12 yesterday, and 12, 10 and 6. And we talk about, we don't use language like can't, we use language like can. So what can we start doing? And how can we be there to support each other and all those little things. So to me, that's really important, especially we can have an influence over such little people like you have with your 3 as well. It's we're the major influence on them to grow up to be the next gen that will be a part of this new change. So that excites me as a dad as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So go Smith in his athletics this afternoon.
Correct. Got to get out there and get it to the athletics in his 3 finals that he's in his district at. So look, Dan, thanks again, mate. Thank you for joining us again. Your open, your honesty, your advice, your thoughts, your comments. It's fantastic. It's actually quite refreshing as well to hear a leader like you take on what you are doing. And you've got a busy life, you've got a busy family, got a busy workplace, you're growing your business, and all of those little ticks are the way you balance that out is really important. So to all of you that are online, hopefully you've taken something away. I know I have. Hopefully we can continue to add value to how you can become a better manager, a better leader, maybe a better person. I've always thought about it from a point of view, if I can become a better person and a better partner and a better dad, well, that's going to lead into my business life. And that's something that's I always reflect on that and make sure that I'm constantly treating people the way I want to be treated. I think that's a really important factor. Little minor thing, but always think about that. Thank you again. Thank you to all of you that have joined. I'm signing off till next time. Keep an eye out for our continued Accountants Empire CEO series with my next CEO. I'm chatting to the CEO of the IPA. So Andrew Conway is going to be joining us here live. It's going to be in August, which is ridiculous. It's August next week. So keep an eye out for your invite and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks, Daniel.